There is a moment, and you've felt it before, where everything goes quiet. Not the kind of quiet that brings peace, but the kind that feels like the universe is trying to whisper something directly into your soul. A moment where you pause, mid-thought, and wonder, is something trying to reach me? Most people shake it off. They return to their phones, their routines, their noise. But what if that feeling wasn't random? What if it wasn't anxiety, coincidence, or imagination? What if something far greater than you has been sending you signals, and you've been too distracted to notice? Before we go any further, if you've ever had a moment where life felt like it was trying to tell you something, type the word signal in the comments right now. You'll be surprised how many people feel exactly the same way. And if this video speaks to something deep inside you, go ahead and like it. Not for the algorithm, but as a small acknowledgement that you're ready to listen. Because here's the truth that most people never sit with. Long enough to understand the universe, or whatever you believe governs the grand design of existence, does not shout. It doesn't send emails. It doesn't interrupt your favorite show with breaking news about your own soul. It speaks in patterns, in timing, in the quiet collapse of things that were never meant to last, in the stranger who said exactly what you needed to hear, in the door that closed so hard it shook the walls of your comfort, only to reveal a corridor you never would have walked down on your own. The ancient sages called these moments divine interruptions. Modern philosophers call them threshold experiences. But ordinary people, people like you and me, we call them something simpler. Wake-up calls. The question is not whether you've received them. You have. The real question is, have you been listening? In this video, we're going to explore something that has fascinated philosophers, mystics, and seekers of truth for thousands of years. The idea that a higher intelligence is constantly communicating with us, and the extraordinary, often overlooked ways it chooses to speak. Stay with me, because what you're about to discover might just change the way you see everything. Long before the age of smartphones, social media, and the endless scroll of modern distraction, human beings were deeply attuned to something beyond themselves. They looked up at the stars and saw not just burning balls of gas, but a living map of meaning. They listened to the wind and heard not just weather, but warnings. They sat in silence, not because they had nothing to do, but because they understood that silence was where truth lived. Every great civilization that has ever risen on this earth shared one common belief at its core, that existence is not random, that there is an intelligence woven into the fabric of reality itself. The ancient Egyptians spoke of Maat, a cosmic principle of order, truth, and harmony that governed not just the universe but the inner life of every human being. The Greeks spoke of the Logos, a divine reason or word that structured all of creation and could be accessed through deep contemplation and self-knowledge. The Stoics, those remarkable philosopher-warriors of Rome, believed that the universe was a living, rational organism, and that every event, every encounter, every loss was part of a deliberate and purposeful design. These were not naive people. These were mathematicians, astronomers, architects, and warriors who had looked deeply into the nature of reality and arrived at the same staggering conclusion. Something is paying attention to us, and more than that, it is trying to communicate. The Hindu tradition speaks of Brahman, the ultimate consciousness that underlies all of existence, expressing itself through every moment, every form, every breath. The ancient Chinese philosophy of the Tao describes an invisible force that flows through all things, guiding the natural order of the world. When you are aligned with it, life moves with grace. When you resist it, everything feels like struggle and friction. What is remarkable is this: despite being separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years, these traditions arrived at strikingly similar truths. That the universe is not indifferent. That life is not happening to you, it is happening for you, and often through you. That beneath the surface of ordinary events lies a layer of meaning that most people never slow down enough to perceive. The medieval philosopher Meister Eckhart once wrote that God, or the divine ground of being, is always speaking. But the soul must become still enough to hear, not still in body alone, but still in mind, still in ego, still in the relentless need to control, explain, and categorize every experience before it has had a chance to teach you something. And this is where modern humanity has drifted so far from its roots. We have built a world that is magnificently loud: notifications, deadlines, opinions, outrage, entertainment. We have constructed an entire civilization whose primary function seems to be the elimination of silence, because somewhere deep down we are afraid of what we might hear in it. But the signal never stopped. The transmission never went quiet. The ancient wisdom traditions all agree on this. The divine does not abandon the seeker. It waits, it repeats, it escalates, not out of anger, but out of love. Like a teacher who explains the same lesson in 10 different ways because they refuse to give up on the student. The only question that has ever mattered is whether you are willing to become a student again. Let's talk about the way it actually happens, because most people imagine divine communication as something dramatic. A booming voice from the heavens, a blinding flash of light, an angel appearing at the foot of their bed. And because life rarely delivers that kind of cinematic moment, they conclude that nothing is speaking to them at all. But that is not how it works. That has never been how it works. Think about the most important lessons you have ever learned in your life. Were they delivered in a clean, comfortable, perfectly timed package, or did they arrive wrapped in confusion, in loss, in a relationship that fell apart, in a career that collapsed, in a season of life that felt utterly unbearable while you were living through it, but which, looking back, you now recognize as the very thing that made you who you are today? That is the first language of the divine. Disruption, not chaos for its own sake, not suffering as punishment, but the deliberate, loving removal of what no longer serves you, even when you are clinging to it with both hands. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journals that the obstacle is not in the way. The obstacle is the way. He meant that the very thing blocking your path is the path itself. The resistance you feel is the lesson. The breakdown is the breakthrough, waiting for you to stop fighting it long enough to receive it. Consider the story of a sculptor. When asked how he created such breathtaking works of art, one great sculptor replied simply, I remove everything that is not the sculpture. This is precisely how a higher intelligence shapes a human life. It does not add what you need by force. It removes what is in the way. And sometimes what is in the way is a relationship you loved, a job you depended on, a version of yourself you had outgrown without realizing it. The pain of that removal is real. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. But pain, in this context, is not evidence that the universe has forgotten you. It is evidence that something is being sculpted. The second language is repetition. Have you ever noticed that the same kind of situation keeps finding you? The same type of person, the same conflict, the same emotional pattern, wearing a different face each time. Most people experience this as bad luck or as some cruel joke of fate. But the ancient wisdom traditions offer a different interpretation entirely. Repetition is the universe's way of returning you to an unfinished lesson. It will keep sending you the same teacher in different costumes, in different yin seasons, in different relationships, until you finally learn what you were meant to learn from the encounter. Not to defeat it, not to avoid it, but to understand it, integrate it, and grow beyond it. The third language, and perhaps the most subtle, is synchronicity. The Swiss psychologist Carl Jung spent decades studying what he called meaningful coincidences, moments where an outer event and an inner state align in a way that cannot be explained by logic alone. You think of someone you haven't spoken to in years, and they call you that same afternoon. You reach a crossroads in your life, not knowing which direction to turn, and you randomly open a book to a page that speaks directly to your situation. You feel an inexplicable pull toward a place, a person, or a decision. And following that pull changes everything. Jung believed these moments were not accidents. He believed they were the universe's signature, its way of confirming that you are on the right path, or gently redirecting you when you have strayed from it. The divine, it seems, is endlessly creative in the ways it chooses to reach us. It speaks in disruption, in repetition, in synchronicity, and in the quiet, persistent whisper of your own deepest knowing. The only question is, have you been paying attention? But here is where it gets truly fascinating, and where most people, even those who consider themselves spiritually aware, tend to miss the deeper layer entirely. Because recognizing that the universe is communicating with you is only half of the revelation. The other half, the part that changes everything, is understanding why you have been unable to hear it. And the answer is not what most people expect. It is not because you are unworthy. It is not because you are being punished or ignored or forgotten. The reason most people miss the signals is far more ordinary and far more profound than any of that. It is this: you have been living almost entirely on the surface of yourself. Think about how most people move through a day. They wake up and immediately reach for their phone. They consume news, opinions, other people's lives, other people's emergencies. They spend their mental energy planning, worrying, rehearsing conversations that haven't happened yet, replaying ones that already have. They are physically present in their lives, but mentally living somewhere else and entirely. In the past they can't change, or the future they can't control. The ancient Greeks had a concept for this fragmented, distracted state of being. They called it Acrasia, the condition of acting against one's own deeper knowing, a kind of inner weakness where the noise of the surface drowns out the wisdom of the depths. Plato described the human soul as a charioteer driving two horses, one representing reason and higher wisdom, the other representing appetite and impulse. Most people, he observed, spend their entire lives being dragged by the second horse, never realizing they hold the reins. And here is the hidden contradiction that almost no one talks about. The very things we use to cope with the discomfort of life are the same things that deafen us to its deeper meaning. Constant entertainment numbs the ache, but it also numbs the signal. Relentless busyness creates a feeling of purpose, but it crowds out the silence where real purpose is discovered. Even the habit of surrounding yourself with other people's opinions, other people's noise, other people's certainty about how the world works, all of it builds a kind of invisible wall between you and the quiet intelligence that is always trying to reach you. The 13th century poet and mystic Rumi wrote one of the most haunting lines in all of human literature. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right-doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. He was pointing to something that exists beneath the layer of thought, judgment, and noise, a deeper field of awareness where truth does not argue with you, it simply reveals itself. But you cannot enter that field while your mind is crowded. You cannot hear a whisper in the middle of a roar. There is also a second reason. People miss the signals, and this one is even more subtle. It is the habit of interpreting every experience through the lens of what you already believe. If you believe the universe is indifferent, you will see indifference everywhere. If you believe you are unlucky, every obstacle will confirm that story. The mind is extraordinarily powerful, not just in how it processes reality, but in how it filters it. It will find evidence for whatever narrative it has already decided is true. This is why the ancient wisdom traditions placed such extraordinary emphasis on the practice of emptying the mind, not filling it with more information, more doctrine, more answers, but learning the radical discipline of not knowing, of approaching each moment as if for the first time. The Zen tradition calls this Shoshin, beginner's mind, the state in which you are open enough, humble enough, and quiet enough to receive what is actually being offered to you. Because the divine does not speak to the mind that is already full. It speaks to the one that has made room. So how do you actually begin to listen? How do you, in the middle of a busy, complicated, often overwhelming life, start to tune into something that speaks in whispers rather than announcements? The answer is simpler than you might expect, but it requires something that has become almost revolutionary in the modern world. It requires intentional stillness, not hours of meditation on a mountaintop, not a complete withdrawal from the world. Just small, deliberate pockets of silence that you carve out of your day, like a sculptor carving space from stone. 5 minutes in the morning before you reach for your phone, a walk without headphones, a meal eaten without a screen in front of you. These are not small things. These are acts of profound courage in a world that profits from your distraction. Begin by simply paying attention to what keeps returning to you, not what is loudest in your life, but what is most persistent. the quiet dream that never fully dies, the passion you keep postponing, the relationship pattern that keeps repeating, the inexplicable sense that you are meant for something you haven't yet stepped into. These are not random. They are coordinates. They are the universe drawing a map directly to the life you are here to live. The second practice is what ancient traditions called reflective contemplation, the habit of asking deeper questions about your own experience, rather than simply reacting to it. When something difficult happens, instead of immediately asking, "Why is this happening to me?" try asking, "What is this asking me to become?" That single shift in perspective transforms every obstacle from an attack into an invitation, from a dead end into a doorway. The Stoics practiced something called the evening review. Each night, before sleep, they would quietly reflect on the day, not to judge themselves, but to observe. Where did I act in alignment with my deeper values? Where did I drift? What did today try to teach me that I almost missed? This practice, done consistently, begins to sharpen your awareness in extraordinary ways. You start to notice patterns you were blind to before. You start to feel the difference between a decision that comes from fear and one that comes from genuine inner guidance. The third and perhaps most powerful practice is learning to trust the quiet voice. Every person alive has experienced it. That deep, steady, unhurried knowing that arises not from logic but from somewhere beneath it. It doesn't shout. It doesn't compete with the noise. It simply waits. And when you are still enough, humble enough, it speaks with a clarity that no amount of external advice can match. The philosopher Blaise Pascal once observed that all of humanity's problems stem from the inability to sit quietly in a room alone. He was pointing at something profound, that we run from silence, because silence forces us into honest confrontation with ourselves. But that confrontation, as uncomfortable as it can be, is precisely where transformation begins. It is in that honest, quiet space that the signals become clear, that the patterns reveal themselves, that the next step, which felt invisible before, suddenly becomes obvious. You do not need to have everything figured out. You do not need a perfect spiritual practice or a flawless philosophy of life. You only need to begin, to slow down enough to notice, to get quiet enough to hear, to trust that the intelligence which designed the stars and the seasons and the extraordinary complexity of a single human heartbeat has not forgotten about you. It never did. It never will. Here is what I want you to carry with you long after this video ends. You are not alone in this life. You never have been. And the moments that felt most isolating, most confusing, most unbearable, those were not moments of abandonment. They were moments of transformation in disguise. They were the chisel striking the stone, the pressure forming the diamond, the darkness before a dawn that was always coming, even when you could not see it. The signals have always been there, in the timing that didn't make sense until years later, in the loss that cleared the path, in the stranger's words that landed like they were meant specifically for you, in the silence between your thoughts, where something ancient and patient has been waiting, not with frustration, but with the kind of steady, unwavering faith in you that you have perhaps forgotten to have in yourself. The great philosopher Søren Kierkegaard wrote that life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. And there is a profound mercy in that truth. You do not need to understand everything that is happening to you right now. You only need to trust that it is happening for you, that the hand shaping your life sees further than you do, that the story is not finished, that the chapter you are in, no matter how difficult, how uncertain, how far from what you imagined, is not the end. It is the turning point. So from this moment forward, make a quiet promise to yourself. Not a grand, dramatic vow, just a small, sincere commitment to pay closer attention, to sit with silence a little longer, to ask deeper questions of your own experience, to notice what keeps returning to you, to trust the quiet voice that has never truly led you astray, even when you stopped listening to it. Because here is the final truth, the one that ancient sages and modern philosophers and every great tradition of human wisdom has been pointing toward across thousands of years. The divine does not ask for your perfection. It asks for your presence, not a perfect life, not a flawless mind, just an open heart and a willingness to listen. And if you are watching this video right now, if something drew you to click on it, if something kept you here until these final words, perhaps that itself is a signal worth paying attention to. The question was never whether something greater than you is trying to reach you. It always has been. The only question, the one only you can answer, is whether you are finally ready to listen.